मधुर मनोहर अतीव सुंदर ये सर्व विद्या की राजधानी राजधानी।
This is 14th lecture in the series of mechanics of metal forming. This lecture will cover the yielding criteria, the yield function that causes yielding for a particular material, the yield surface and the yield criteria. Two popular yield criteria, von Mises and Tresca, and how these criteria are represented on graphically. These criteria would also be experimentally verified. So, we would be discussing all these related issues, and at the end of the whole deliveries, we would be solving some of the problems to illustrate the use of this criteria. So, let us recall where the uniaxial tension. So, yielding, if we go beyond the elastic limit and when the yielding takes place within plastic region. So, yielding to take place under what condition? Generally it can be seen that beyond the elastic limit and when the plastic region start, even a small stress plastic material to flow plastically. So, yielding and flow, it is at a very minute point where the force or the stress becomes very slightly greater than the yield strength of the material, the material is going to form permanently, and that is the point where the yielding will start. The yielding may cause further the failure of a material. Failure, the yielding that causes failure, that comes if you compare with the necking and all those things, that those situations usually when we form material by any process, forming processes, we have to avoid that. So, let us first see the yield criteria, and once a particular material loading which is beyond linear elastic range, as the Hooke's law is quite valid within plastic length, but when it goes beyond that, the Hooke's law do not to force, because the occurrence of plastic deformation take place, and in the material is started, and therefore this yield criteria has to be replaced by some constitutive equation of plastic bodies, and the law that defines the limit of the elasticity under any combination of the stress. Uniaxial tension, there was only one axis, but we would be coming across a 3-dimensional stress field, and therefore there would be any combination of stress, and therefore a criteria for yielding or yield condition has to be must be there. Uniaxial case, just now if we see, it is very easy to define the limit of elasticity or the onset of yielding. One can define in a very simple manner this equation number 1. So, there is a function, means the set of stress field is such, when this particular function of the stress field exceeds, then the yield will start. So, this is represented in this equation number 1, where let the function is f sigma square minus sigma y square. So, sigma is stress, that is the stress, and sigma y is the yield stress of the particular material. That means, in this equation number 1, where the function f is less than 0 or it could be equal to 0. So, this state define the elastic and plastic range of the material respectively. For a rigid perfectly plastic material, the applied stress cannot exceed, and therefore a constant for a given material, and that particular of the stress which is is greater than 0 would be considered physically, which is almost not possible, it is impossible, and therefore a 3-dimensional state of stress at a point is characterized by by 6 independent elements of the stress tensor, that is sigma we discussed. And when this stress, when this sigma ij, that is the stresses are small, the material behaves elastically, but at a certain level and combination of the stresses sigma ij, the material starts to deform plastically. To distinguish between the elastic and plastic range, a mathematical relationship which will define the possible combination of these stresses which will lead to separation of the elastic and plastic behavior of the material is very much required. So, if we assume the yield condition for multi-axial state of the stress in a perfectly plastic material can be defined by sum of the yield function f, if it is so. So, such that the function f is less than 0 in the elastic range, and when it becomes 0 then it is a plastic range, and therefore the state of stress for which function f value is physically impossible therefore. So, this yield function f in a very general manner can be expressed by this equation number 2. So, let us, the function f, the yield function is represented by this particular equation number 2, where the f is function of sigma ij, epsilon ij, that is the stress field, strain field, deviatoric stress field, deviatoric strain field, the positions, that is x, time domain, and material constant. So, this function if we define in this manner, we can say that this is an yield function f. So, assuming that the body under consideration is isotropic and the properties are not time and temperature dependent. So, the yield function will become independent of the coordinate xi, temperature t, time t, and time intervals of the stress and strain. if the material is further assumed to be perfectly plastic with properties independent of any elastic or plastic deformation which may have occurred previously, that is any history if it is there, the yield function become path independent therefore, and can be expressed merely in terms of instantaneous stresses, and an appropriate constant k therefore has been introduced, and that represents the plastic properties of the material. It is also assumed that the material yields at the same level in compression as well as in tension. So, the above function, which is equation number 5 equation number second, equation 2, the can be reduced under this situation, that is the function is dependent, if it is a function of stress field and k, that is the material property. Let us look at this figure number 1, where the 3-dimensional principal stress space has been shown. The having surface S, and if we take an isotropic material, the material properties are same everywhere in all the direction therefore. The material constants are therefore independent of the coordinate transformation because it is isotropic, and let us assume that the material to be isotropic under. So, the yield function can be expressed in the terms of invariants, because it has been shown that with the change of axis the invariants do not change, and therefore the name has come invariance. So, if it is so, the yield function can be very easily expressed in terms of the invariants of the stress tensor, and therefore this function can be represented in equation number 4 like it is the function of invariants I1, I2 and I3 and k, the material property. Earlier experimental observation indicate that the hydrostatic compression or tension does not affect yielding. Explained long back also, second or third lecture. Hence, the hydrostatic component can be omitted from the yield function, and consequently the yield function can be expressed in terms of the stress derivative tensor only, as which is the function is J1, J2, J3 and k. Therefore, since J1 is 0 by definition, we have already seen. So, therefore, the function yield function is a function of J2, J3 and k. Now, therefore, this criteria, that is the yield criteria, will reduce to a function of two non-zero invariants of the stress derivative tensor J, and therefore, if that is the derivative part is represented by say minus sigma ij, and let J2 remains unaffected, since but J3 would be equal to minus J3. So, the yield function should there be independent of J3, or it should be an even function of J3. In an isotropic material, in fact, all the principal stresses must same role in yielding as the function, the yield function, which is function of J2 and J3 will be, and therefore it will be symmetric in principal stresses. So, properties of yield function. Let us consider the 3-dimensional principal stress space, which was shown in figure number 1 again, where the state of stress is shown by the stress vector stress prime with stresses where the principal stresses sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3s with principal stresses, and let us see the line OH, which is making equal angle with all the coordinate axes, and therefore has the property that for every point the stress state is one for which sigma 1 is equal to sigma 2 is equal to sigma 3, and therefore it is equal to sigma mean. Thus, every point on this particular line OH corresponds to a hydrostatic or spherical steady state. Let us consider passing through the origin O and which is perpendicular to OH in figure number 1. The equation through this plane will be therefore sigma 1 plus sigma 2 plus sigma 3 is equal to 0, or simply sigma II is equal to 0, where the sigma II represents the first invariant of the stress tensor, and the derivative stress invariants any point on the plane sigma II is equal to 0 represents a derivative stress, and any arbitrary stress vector sigma say can now therefore be decomposed into component sigma m, which is parallel to line OH, and another component which is sigma prime on the plane S. So, these two components represent and derivative component of the stress state. So, the yield condition, that is the sigma 1 consisting of sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3 and k, which is equal to 0, can now be very easily represented in the principal stress space by a surface which is called as yield surface. So, let us see this yield surface, figure number 2. Now, look at the domain bounded by this surface, which is the feasible domain for perfectly plastic material. When the stress vector sigma prime is inside, point is in the body in the state of elastic range, and the occur when this sigma bar reaches the yield surface. Those stress state which will occur to cause sigma bar to pass through the yield are considered physically impossible, as already said. Is independent of hydrostatic stress state. Addition of any hydrostatic to existing stress state will not influence at all in yielding, and therefore consequently surface must be open, and if you see here, this is the what is the yield surface is being shown. So, the OH which is equally inclined. So, this line OH, that is, it is a cylinder, it will be giving a cylinder with generators which is parallel to. This cylinder is defined by the curve capital C, which is shown here, this capital C, which represents the intersection of the cylinder with the plane S. This curve C is called as the locus. One can see the locus. So, let us look at this figure number 3. If you project this locus onto a pi plane is a plane which is inclined, if we from the 3 axis if we take, and if we here, so normal from the center of the pi plane will make an equal angle with the all the principal axis, principal stress axis. So, look at this figure, the pi plane, project it. So, this shows the yield locus which from the figure number 2, and if you project it to the axis xy sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3 on to the plane x, these projections define therefore sigma 1 prime, sigma 2 prime and sigma 3 prime, that makes the equal angle with the other which is 120 degree. So, yield locus has the same shape in each the 12 region which is inclined at 30 degree sector, which is shown in figure number 3, and because of the isotropy the material, the stresses sigma 1, sigma 2 and sigma 3 are interchangeable, therefore the yield locus therefore be asymmetric about the lines AA, which is bisecting the angle between of sigma 1, sigma 2 and sigma 3. Since the yield stress is assumed to be the tension and compression, a change in the sign of the stress will not change the plastic behavior of the material, and the yield locus must have about the line BB which is perpendicular to the axis, and hence the 12 sectors of the yield, if you look at the figure 3 which is shown here, have the same meaning to the uniaxial load case. The strain tensor and the strain in 3D state of the strain also can be decomposed into the elastic and plastic, therefore, and therefore this equation number 7, which is the strain tensor, is consisting of the strain tensor part and strain tensor part plastic, and therefore one can look at this figure where the sectors 1, 2, 3 and 12 sectors are shown on the pi plane. Now, let us consider a 3-dimensional strain based on the previous equation equation number 5 to 8. So, we have now the 3-dimensional strain space which is coaxial with the stress space. The plastic strain vector at a point in the space are therefore epsilon ijp or epsilon say xxp, epsilon yyp plastic corresponding, epsilon zxp, epsilon zxyp, epsilon yzp, epsilon zxp, and the corresponding plastic strain increment vector would be d epsilon ijp or d epsilon zxp, d epsilon yyp, d epsilon zp, d epsilon xzp, d epsilon yzp, d epsilon zxp. These are shown as a free vector which is attached to the end point of the stress field, which is shown here. One can see here this figure, this is the what is the free vector, and this is what is showing the yield surface. This is what is the yield surface. O is the point origin and this is the stress tensor. So, this shows the plastic strain increment vector, and therefore if the function yield function f is less than 0, no plastic deformation will occur. Therefore, that is the strain tensor increment vector p would be 0, and therefore the plastic strain increment vector only for those vector which touches the yield surface. So, which touches here only. To determine the plastic increment vector d epsilon ijp, therefore stability postulate has to be considered as discussed earlier also. So, let us consider a state of stress, say sigma ij a, which is satisfying the condition when the yield function, which is sigma ij a k, is less than 0. Figure number 5 here. So, figure number 5, the stability postulate, if it is see. So, 3 cases are here. So, 3 cases A, B and C. So, consider the state when the external energy applies external stresses and then removes it. The end point of the stress vector therefore moves to point B and C on the yield locus. It can be seen there in figure number A, and then returns to point A, capital A. According to the Drucker's stability postulate, if you recall, the net work done by the additional stress, that is sigma ij minus sigma ij a, corresponding to the point, during the complete loading cycle, that is ABCD, from ABCD, it never, and that means over the surface, that is the integral of sigma ij minus sigma ij a multiplied by the increment strain be equal to the summation of the two, the elastic part and the plastic part, and that must be either greater or equal to 0. This is shown in equation number 9 here. So, since the work done by the is 0 for the closed path, and therefore within the closed path sigma ij minus sigma ij tensor A multiplied by the increment of the plastic strain tensor, it should be greater than or equal to 0. This is what has been shown in equation number 10 here, if you look. So, one can see in this figure A, where this shows the yield surface. This is the function of the stress tensor and the material property K, and it is equal to 0. This is yield. So, the vector, the triangle OAB, so there are 3 vectors. OB corresponds to sigma ijb at the point B, that is, and AB is sigma ij minus sigma ij, that is from point B to point A, and OA is your sigma ij at point A. So, and that what's the normal, that is the strain increment ij is shown at an angle alpha from direction AB. In figure 5c, where the yield surface is shown having the function sigma ij k, and which is equal to 0, one can see that the normal, that is n cap, and that is what has been shown, the strain increment sigma epsilon ij, across the normal, and across the vector at the point at and that is sigma ij, the stress vector tensor. The stability. So the plastic deformation develop only in the range which lies on the yield locus. So if you recall the figure number 5, previous figure 5a, this is represented by line BC there. That is, if the point B and C are assumed to be very close to each other, then the that is d sigma ij will be infinitesimally small, and the corresponding plastic strain increment vector, that is d epsilon ij p, can be assumed to be constant and infinitesimally small, and therefore the work, that is the multiplication of d sigma ij and d epsilon ij p corresponding to the plastic, can be neglected, and that is the stability postulate can now be expressed in this simple form by equation number 11. So the stability postulate becomes your sigma ij b corresponding to the point B minus sigma ij a, which is started from point A, and the plastic, that is d sigma ij p, it should always be greater than or equal to 0, because the plastic part is now no more. So this dot product of the two vectors, because these are vectors, is positive only when the angle between them is less than or equal to 90 degree. Therefore the angle between vector, that is sigma ij b minus sigma ij a and d epsilon ij p cannot be larger than 90 degree, or therefore alpha less than or equal to 90 degree. Since the stress vector, that is sigma ij b, has a given position as it is shown in figure number 5b, and the plastic strain increment will depend only on the instantaneous stress, that is sigma ij b. It is therefore represented by a fixed but still unspecified vector delta sigma epsilon ij p at the point B. One can see here in the figure 5b. The ij a, however, can be anywhere in the feasible domain of the stresses. Now let us consider a plane which is passing through point B, and it is normal to plastic strain d sigma ij p. The condition where alpha can therefore be satisfied for any arbitrary stress field sigma ij a only when it lies on the one side of the draw normal to d epsilon I. In other way, the entire feasible domain of the stress of the plane under consideration. Therefore, this implies that the yield surface, which is function of sigma ij and k is equal to 0, this equation must be convex. This has come to be known as the convexity rule. Therefore, this convexity rule is very popular. Now again consider a plane which is tangent to the yield surface as the point under consideration shown in the figure number 5c. So if you see here, since d sigma epsilon ijp is normal to this plane, it can be stated that the plastic strain increment vector is consistent with the outward normal vector to the yield surface. It is, and this is called as the normality rule. So, the first one which was called as the convexity rule, this corresponding to this one, it is called as the normality rule, and therefore it is obvious that Brooke convexity rule and normality rule are interrelated. These two rules are interrelated therefore. The outward normal vector, if you see the COP to be yield surface of the yield function which is f ij k is equal to 0 can be obtained as the gradient of the yield function, and that is written in equation number 12 here, which is the normal vector n cap is equal to deva f by deva sigma ij, and the plastic increment vector can therefore be easily expressed as d epsilon ij p, which is equal to ni d lambda, and it equal to d lambda. Therefore, if you put the value of this normal, so this becomes d lambda by deva sigma ij, which is shown in equation number 13 here. As told, lambda is the non-negative constant earlier, and it would mean a negative strain associated with a positive stress therefore. So, with this relationship of the yield function, then the yield surface, the strain increment, one can now propose the different yield criteria which is responsible for flow of the material during deformation. There are many flow yield criteria proposed by many people. The criteria that limits to the plastic region is our concern. There are no our concern, we are not concerned with the other, which is it acts up to the elastic part. So, let us among many other yield criteria, the two criteria are very popular, one which is called as the von Mises yield criteria and another is called as Tresca yield criteria. So, let us look into the von Mises yield criteria, how we now make use of the simple postulates that we have discussed so far. So, von Mises yield criteria, let us assume the influence of the J3 on the yield to be insignificant, as the yield becomes a function of J2 therefore only, as previously shown in equation number 6. So, let us use the yield to be the simplest non-trivial function of J2 therefore here, and therefore the von Mises who proposed this criteria in 1913 around, a very simple criteria which is shown here in equation number 14. So, the criteria is, that is the yield function is equal to J2 minus K L square is equal to 0, where J2 is, as remember, the invariant, second invariant, and that can be given as it is consisting of these 7 terms, sigma xy square plus sigma yz square plus sigma zx square minus xx prime, that is the derivative part, sigma yy prime minus sigma y multiplied by sigma zz prime minus sigma zz prime multiplied by sigma xx prime. Can be again written it which is equal to sigma xx prime is square, sigma y prime is square, z prime is square plus sigma xy prime is square plus sigma x zy prime is square and sigma zx prime is square. So, 15 which is equal to J2. And since if you recall the sigma xx prime plus sigma yy prime, the whole together is square, it can be represented in this form. So, that is equal to the sigma xx prime is square plus sigma yy prime is square plus sigma prime is square plus twice of the sigma xx prime sigma yy prime plus sigma yy prime sigma zz prime plus sigma zz prime sigma xx prime, or it can also be written in the this which is shown in equation number 16. So, it is shown it can be then shown as which is equal to half in bracket sigma xx prime is square plus sigma y zz prime is square plus in bracket sigma xx prime yy prime sigma yy prime sigma zz prime plus sigma zz prime sigma xx prime, and these two set the sum has to be 0, which is shown here in equation number 16. And since sigma xx prime plus sigma yy prime plus sigma zz prime is 0, and therefore one can write down this set of 3 equations which is shown in number 17 here as sigma xx prime is equal to twice of the sigma xx minus sigma yy minus sigma zz by 3, and likewise one can also write it for sigma x in the other form also, which is shown in equation number 17. And the same equation number 17 can be Fourier form, and therefore J2 becomes, J2 is equal to half of sigma ij prime sigma ij prime. So, that is the hydrostatic. So, if you substitute the above relationship and if you simplify the J2, and one can find out in a very real stress form where all the stresses are there. So, J2 becomes 1 by 6, and within the long bracket which is shown here in have got 3 terms, like the first term is sigma xx minus sigma yy square plus sigma yy minus sigma zz square zz minus sigma xx square plus thrice of sigma xy square plus sigma zx square plus sigma yx square plus sigma x zy square plus sigma z square. So, this J2 it can further be rearranged, and it is shown in equation number 15 here. So, that is more systematic way. So, that means J2 becomes 1 by 6 of these 4 terms. The first term which is sigma xx minus sigma yy whole square, second term sigma yy minus sigma zz whole square, plus third term as sigma zz xx whole square, and the fourth term which consists of 6 under bracket sigma xy square plus sigma yz square plus sigma zx square. This equation number 19 is much more better equation for J2. Now, so the yield criteria becomes what? So, the yield criteria for the von Mises becomes your very simple function f given by this one, and therefore, it becomes 1 by 6 sigma xx minus sigma yy square plus second term as sigma yy minus sigma zx z square plus sigma zz minus sigma xx square plus 6 of the sigma xy square plus sigma y square plus square, and minus, if you recall the first equation where KL is equal to KL square, which is the K is the material property, the yield strength of the material, and that should be equal to 0. So, this equation number 20, which is उसको जरा सा ठीक करिए. So, this equation number 20, the function becomes the whole together, which is equal to 0. Now, let us make use of this equation and let us determine the constants. So, since the yield criteria is valid for complex 3-dimensional stress situation, it must hold good for simple cases as well, like this very simple case as the simple tensile, uniaxial tensile, or it may as well as. Let us apply it for the uniaxial tension case. So, if you recall the equation number 20 here, this equation number 20. So, if you for the uniaxial tension case, what should be the condition? That means uniaxial tension means sigma yy, that is the stress in y stress, that is sigma yy, and sigma zz has both to be 0, and because the shear component is it's a pure tension. So, sigma xy, sigma yz and sigma zx, substitute this condition into equation number 20, sigma xx minus thrice k 1 square is equal to 0, and this is what is the condition of the yielding. KL becomes the yield strength of the material, and then we can use it for pure shear when there is no tension. We will go through this part for the other constant under different situation in the next lecture. So, we would still continue in the second and third lecture on the yield criteria, because there is still Tresca yield criteria as well. Later we have to see that how these criteria are mental basis, so that one can be sure that a particular criteria which would be most suitable for plastic deformation, one can decide. So, I would like to thank you all for your patience. You not to forget, give your feedback, solve the problems, objective problems on the net which is there, judge yourself how much understanding you have made, and let us so that we can further improve upon for your betterment, better understanding. We can add upon few more tools to the web based courses. Thank you all.